Cricket Fan Show. Mac here, joined as always by Steve. You all right?
Hey, Mac. Good to see you, mate.
Yeah, good to see you too. And Tony, good to see you too.
Better late than never, guys. Better late than never.
Yeah, apologise anybody who's waiting. We started slightly late, but we will aim to start at 8 o'clock every week. So we've got a picture here which kind of personifies what happened with the England versus India games. And India basically had a clean sweep. They won the test, which was pretty straight sailing for them. And then they had the T20, which was a bit more of a competition. And then the one-day internationals, which again was tight. And here's Sam Curran being comforted. He did incredibly well with Ian Morgan there comforting him. And that kind of, like I said, personifies what happened with the situation. So Steve and Tony will fill you in on everything that's happened and give us the kind of flavour of what the fans' kind of thoughts of what happened there. Why England didn't really come off with any kind of wins. There were kind of a few wins, but overall wins, and why India were imperious in the situation. So over to you, Steve.
Cheers, Mac. Well, thanks. It's a fascinating tour to talk about, really, and lots going on under the bonnet. I want to talk, Tony, first of all about the one-day international series and just kind of clear that up, because it was a pretty interesting few games. India won that 2-1 in the end, and it went down to the last couple of balls. That image that Mac had on screen was of Curran just failing to get 100 and just failing to get England over the line. I mean, in a situation that a bowler should never really be faced with, needing to score 100 to get your team over the line in a one-day international, but he nearly did it. But I think looking across that series as a whole, before we talk about the whole tour, I think comparing the two teams is quite instructive. So to say, India won 2-1. And looking at England's batting, of course, first thing to say is Owen Morgan and Sam Billings got injured in the first game. They both batted in that game, but their injuries were such that they weren't able to participate in the rest of the series. So you have to wonder just how fit they were to bat in that game. And I think we talked a little bit about that last week. But then Morgan handed the captaincy over to Jos Buttler. And I have to say, Tony, with the bat, he had a pretty terrible series. He scored fewer than 6 runs per innings. And he faced just 25 balls in 3 matches, which was fewer than Mark Wood faced in 2 matches. Not great for Buttler on this tour. What did you make of that? Was that a surprise?
Well, I've got my own theory about that. I feel very, very sorry for Buttler. 1, he had to captain for 2 matches. 2, he had to keep wicket. 3, he had to organise the bowlers, and he had to organise them from behind the stumps, not where Morgan would be, say, at extra cover or mid-off or mid-on. And the pressure on him, I would say, was very, very heavy, and I would say it drained him. And to be quite honest, I've looked back at various other wicket-keeping captains, and the only one that I could come across in the history of the white ball that has made a success of it was Dhoni. And that was many, many years ago when the game was different, totally different, and not as shall we say, developed as the present day. And I just feel that maybe all those responsibilities blunted Buttler a little bit. Mm-hmm. So he was exhausted, drained by the time he came out to bat. And I really give him more than the benefit of the doubt. Mm-hmm. I'd say that they're almost asking too much of anybody in the modern day, one-day cricket scenario to keep wicket, to organise all the captaincy, and then be expected to come out and play a match-winning innings, which was what was required. Yeah. As for the only time virtually in the series, the opening pair failed to notch up a century almost between them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think that's a good point. Captain, batsman, wicketkeeper, it's a lot to do in one game, and particularly the games are only a couple of days apart as well. I mean, he has been part of the leadership group. He's part of Morgan's leadership group, obviously as vice captain. He's part of Joe Root's leadership group. His kind of leadership ability is obviously valued, but I guess there's a difference between being a trusted lieutenant and being
a mighty difference
the main
between second in command and captaining the ship. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
especially when you're following such an astute captain as Morgan. I don't think probably that didn't affect Butler. I think he gave it his all as a captain, and I couldn't fault his captaincy, to be honest. I thought the way he handled his bowlers and the field settings, whether it be with him or the bowler on their own, I couldn't fault him. I just felt that the effort drained him. I think the powers of concentration that the man had to keep up for the whole of the 50 overs, and it wasn't just the 50 overs, because they overran by about 3/4 of an hour.
Yeah.
Due to the varying stoppages that occurred, not just drinks, but injuries and discussions and all sorts. So I just feel it was and on top of that, it was thrust upon him, and the pressure was really on him, and I feel he was blunted because of that. There is another possibility. Sometimes there are people who, when they step up to be the captain, if you like, the overwhelming responsibility is too much for them, and they don't perform. I'm not convinced that was Butler's fault. If you'd said to me Quinton de Kock, I would have said yes. I think the captaincy was far too much for him, and he gave it up very quickly. But I don't think, in reality, I don't believe that was the fault of Butler's batting failures.
No. So I think for whatever the underlying reason, England got virtually nothing of substance from Butler in this series. People who did bat well, I thought Bairstow did very well. He scored 73 every time he went out to bat, which is pretty good. I say I do runs per innings. I like to look at in white ball cricket rather than sneaking in an average, which can sometimes add a not out.
Oh yeah, can be distorted. Yes.
So when I talk about runs per innings, it's absolutely that. And he was going at 120 runs per 100 balls, so a good quick rate. Obviously, Roy did pretty well as well. He went at a similar rate, and he was scoring about 38 every time he went out to bat. So he did well. Stokes also scoring 45 every time he went out to bat, an even quicker strike rate of 132, which was magnificently bolstered by his almost second 50 in the second game when he scored 49 runs in, what was it, 16 balls or something?
Unbelievable effort. Yes.
Ludicrous like that. It was a phenomenal assault on the Indian bowling, and certainly one or two of them didn't come back from that. Sam Curran obviously did well in certainly in that one innings where he really showed that he could bat. And if you remember, in the T20s, there was at least one game where Curran kept plummeting down the order, and people like Chris Jordan and others.
I think we discussed this earlier. I was flabbergasted when there was one match when he came in below Jofra and the fast bowler Jordan. He came in below Jofra and Jordan. I mean, it's a nonsense. He has shown all throughout his representing England that he is very capable bat. A very capable bat. Like everybody, he fails from time to time. That's only to be expected, especially when you're batting at 7 or 8 or wherever he's batting. No. I think he played very, very well indeed. I think there was perhaps a little bit of naivety in the last match, which is a question of opinion. We maybe can discuss a little later.
Yeah.
Whether you take the runs and leave and take the singles and leave the other man to get another single the next ball. He didn't do that, and he opted to take the responsibility on himself and go for 4 or 5 sixes. When you turn down 5 singles, that means you've got to hit a 6 to get even, let alone hit another 6 to get ahead. And I've expressed this opinion. It's a bit like rugby. I believe when you've got a penalty, you take your points, except there are always exceptional circumstances, of course. You take your points. And I believe Wood was playing so well in that last game that I believe that Curran should have just taken every run that was available. Wood would have given him back the strike very quickly, and then he might have been able to hit his 4s and 6s, and we might have scrambled it. But I'm being picky. The lad played an excellent innings and very nearly pulled it off.
Yeah, I have to say, I think in that, do you take the single or do you back yourself to score more quickly and with boundaries? I think it's really got to be what the batsmen out in the middle feel comfortable with. You don't know what was said between them. You don't know how nervous Wood was or how
Well,
sketchy Wood felt.
yeah,
So
the running the running between the wickets, however, would tell you that I don't think either of them was very sure of what their role
yeah,
was.
so maybe the fewer singles the better
That's,
in that
yeah,
instance.
I mean, that was the first time that Curran had ever been in that position.
Yeah.
And when you think of the responsibility on his shoulders, I think he made a very good fist of it.
Yeah, he did. He did. No criticism of Curran from me either. Another batsman who came in for a couple of games now and I thought did okay was our old mate Liam Livingstone. We've watched and spoken about him through the Big Bash and so on, and he was scoring more than 30 runs every time he went out to bat in those couple of innings. I know it's a very small sample, of course, but his strike rate of 120, 121, in fact, was up there with Bairstow's strike rate and Roy's strike rate, so that's pretty good. But the other guy in the batting lineup who probably attracted most comment as he did in the T20s was David Malan. He was again doing okay, scoring 33 every time he went out to bat. His strike rate was 90, so he was going at less than a run a ball. I think for me, Tony, the problem for Malan is his role in the side is a role that otherwise Joe Root might play in the 50 over side, and I think anyone. The question is, would you rather have X player or Joe Root? Well, unless you're talking about Steve Smith, Kane Williams, or Virat Kohli, you're probably going to always say Joe Root. And even in those instances, you might in some on some surfaces against some attacks pick Root. But so I think the problem for Malan is it's not so much what Malan does; it's who Malan isn't for some people. And I think there's a hankering for Root to be in the side, and that would mean it'd be Malan's place he would take.
I agree. A very, very good point. But the fact remains, Malan is, if he's not one, he's certainly number two in the world performance-wise with the white ball in white ball cricket. And he came in, particularly in the last match, he came in when, for once, the opening partnership and even Stokes had failed. So what he had to do was, to a certain extent, rebuild the innings and then go again. I agree with you totally. If you had to choose between Root and Malan, because they both would play a similar role, I would virtually say 99 people out of 100 would choose Joe Root, wouldn't they? But having said that, Root was not available, and I thought Malan played his part very, very well. And I would have no criticism of him at all. One thing I would say about Livingstone before you leave him, I was pushing Livingstone about 3 years ago to actually get into the test team when he was performing very well for Lancashire. And I thought he was very promising, and he's performed very well in the IPL. And he has another string to his bow in that he is an excellent fielder, top-class fielder.
Yeah.
And
took a beautiful catch, didn't he, in the first game?
Yeah, in this format of cricket, a good fielder can be worth a lot of runs to the team. And I think that there's a place for him, certainly in the squad, and probably 12th man would be his, comes in if anything happens, as happened to Sam Billings or Owen Morgan.
Yeah. No, I think
of course, he turned his arm over and got a wicket.
As always, England's golden arm, top of the bowling rankings. Strike rate of a wicket every 18 balls, an economy of under 7. He did all right. Small sample, but he did all right. Yeah, talking about fielding.
Diabolical ball, of course, but nevertheless, it got a wicket.
Yeah. Talking about fielding, it goes to show what pressure of trying to win a series can do. Some of India's fielding in that last game was absolutely comical. There was, just drop after drop. They were making a complete hash of it. There was one, I think it was Shardul Thakur, who I would have caught it. You would have caught it. Anyone, and he just managed to not catch it. He just messed it up. It was Hardik Pandya, who's a terrific fielder.
He dropped
two. It just goes to show fielding when you're relaxed and confident, fine. Fielding when you're nervous and tense and the game's in the balance can be another thing entirely. But that experience will have done India good. They will now know what it's like to be in that situation I mean, I'm sure they did before with all their experience in the IPL and so on. But it just goes to show there's no amount of experience that completely can eliminate nerves and tension and mistakes from the game. But coming back to batting and looking at India's batting, for me, the standout batsman in the series was Rishabh Pant, who I thought was terrific. He got 50s in both of his innings. His runs per innings was 77.5, so he was absolutely flying, and his strike rate was over 150. So he was really going very quickly. Okay, 2 innings, but two long big innings. He batted really well. I thought Rahul played very well as well. He was he was going 59 every time he went to bat. His strike rate was just a smidge above a runner ball, which is fine. Again, his role in the team is to play that role, not to go twice as fast or half as fast again as
India's approach is totally different to ours. They tended to settle in the early part of the innings, and then because they have Pant and others who can score at a tremendous rate, they accelerate very much in the latter order. Whereas we played it the other way around. We started off like an avalanche, sadly, in 2 matches, that avalanche, which should have taken us to victory, didn't quite pull it off.
That's right. Yeah, Hardik Pandya as well. His strike rate was over 140. He was very fast. But you compare that to both Kohli and Rohit Sharma, who were both the ones you would have probably picked before the series as the batsmen who you would want to watch anytime. Their strike rate was both actually 87 runs per 100.
Yes, so they were positively pedestrian. Yes.
But again, they made runs. Sharma's runs per innings was 30. Kohli's runs per innings was 43. So you can't exactly say they quote failed. They just batted slowly. They batted differently. But obviously, they did enough to win. But for me, I thought with the standout batsman for me was Rishabh Pant. I thought he was excellent, really excellent.
He has progressed since Australia. He has come, and even since the Test series, he has progressed again. That wonderful innings he played, was it in the second Test, has given him abundant confidence, and he now. He's not afraid even to settle in this last match. I think he played quite a few balls and quite a few dot balls, and then all of a sudden he hit a 6, and whoop, he was on his way. Supreme confidence, and must have a wonderful eye.
Yeah. He hit some glorious shots as well.
Without moving his feet once more too.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Moves me. Yeah. No, absolutely. So turning to the bowling, obviously, as we said, top of the England bowling rankings, our favourite golden arm, Liam Livingstone, but setting his small but beautifully formed contribution to one side. Mark Wood, I thought, was England's top bowler. Strike rate of taking the wicket just over every 20 balls, an economy rate of less than 6.5, 6.4. Pretty good going, and given we're talking about people like Pant who are going at 9 and over or something. That's good work.
I would add something to that.
Yeah,
he patently was unwell the last time he bowled, and he still produced an absolutely top-notch performance.
Yeah. Yes, he did. No, he didn't look. He looked very green around the gills and was almost being helped off the pitch at the end of it by Billings or whoever it was who'd gone out to help him. Stokes again. Great all-round performance. His strike rate was taking a wicket every 30 balls, so a wicket every 5 overs, and an economy rate of just over 6. So he was only just going a run a ball. So very good in the context of this series to go with his excellent batting and always good fielding. So terrific. Does make you wonder why, what the decision making to make Buttler the vice captain and not Stokes. Maybe they really do feel that's too much for Stokes to do.
Well, I think as I've said earlier, I think it's even more to make Buttler. And I have this feeling that Stokes thrives on responsibility. I think back to that magnificent innings in England last year, where everything was on his shoulders, and he came through to win the match. I too was surprised at that, but presumably Morgan has a say in that. I don't know.
Maybe they don't feel Stokes.
Yeah, it was even more strange when you think that Buttler actually went back to the UK and then came back out again.
Yeah. But looking at the rest of England's bowling, England's most economical bowler in the series was Moeen. He was the only one who went for less than a run a ball. He went for 5.7 runs and over, but he only took 1 wicket and 120 balls. And if you compare him to Rashid, who took 3 wickets, okay, a bit better, but he took them at 70 each. So, and his strike rate was 58, a wicket every 58 balls, but his economy rate 7.3. Pretty expensive. So really interesting between the two of them. It struck me that Rashid was, I don't know if he was being picked, but he was certainly being given the treatment. But as he does, when he bowled a really good ball, he took a couple of super wickets, a couple of deliveries were terrific.
He reminds me almost as a spinner's Botham. Every now and then he produces the unplayable ball that will get a wicket, and he certainly, I think, had Kohli's measure throughout the series. He got him out a couple of times, but even when he didn't get him out, he had him, shall we say, on the defensive, and it brings. I've mentioned this to you previously, but it brings into my mind a debate: which is better, bearing in mind our batting ability, which is better, which is more advantageous, if you like, to bowl economically or to take wickets and be reasonably expensive, or fairly, or in this last match, Rashid, very expensive, but he got wickets. Which is the better?
Yeah, it's both work if you do them, if your attack does them both consistently. It doesn't work if 4 of your bowlers are economical and one of them is very expensive because you've given your opponents an out. It doesn't again really work if you've only got 2 or 3 of your bowlers that are wicket takers and regular wicket takers, because you can see those off, and then there's a big period in the middle of the innings where a team can build a partnership. And if that's rattling along, so I obviously wickets is the quickest way to win a game because that's 10 deliveries. But I think over the long run, I think you need a bowling attack that, in the context of the series, and this was a high-scoring series, in the context of a series, gives you a measure of control as a captain, and you're not worried about hiding someone with the ball, or having to find 10 or maybe even 20 overs from someone who is going to go around the park. I think longer term, this isn't very sexy, but I think longer term economy is probably where I would go down.
Yeah, I have to say I'm in the other camp. And one of the main reasons I'm in the other camp is that our batting, normally, on the very odd occasion, as in the last match, they fail. Normally, we score a stack of runs and quickly. Now, there's one flaw in that, and normally we're chasing. We don't bat first very often. So that is perhaps a difficulty. But I think that England back themselves to score plenty of runs. And there are 2 ways of putting pressure on the opponents. One is if you bowl economically and they're not getting runs quickly, the pressure you hope will build up on them and they will play some outrageous shots and get themselves out. That's one way. The second way is you take wickets, and the loss of those wickets pushes them into a defensive mode. Now, having looked at not just India, but teams like Australia and even Sri Lanka and Pakistan, and even the West Indies, who are playing Sri Lanka at the present moment, they have batsmen with the ability to score quickly, but do not necessarily want to go like mad from the start. I think we are alone in that respect now, in that we go out of the blocks, we go very fast. So I tend to believe that if we take wickets when the opposition is trying, if you like, to bed themselves in and accelerate very much in the last 10, 12 overs, I feel that if we take wickets early on, that puts them on the back foot. So I tend to favour wicket takers. Having said that, I do accept that a good economical bowler will put pressure on the other batting side.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, maybe there's a squad role here, and again, you look at the pitch and you look at the opposition, and if you've got a pitch which is going to rag square, and you can put 3 attacking spinners on, and you don't mind if they go for 7 and over because they're going to take 2 or 3 wickets in 6 or 7 overs each, you can supplement them with perhaps some economical pace bowlers who do that job, who hit a length, difficult to get away, tie batsmen up, but maybe on another pitch which is seaming or has got a little bit more for the pace bowlers, you go with your slightly more spearhead fast bowlers, a Wood or someone like that, and you supplement them with some spinners who are going to keep the middle overs dry and slow people up. So maybe that's where the squad comes into it, and it's about reading.
The other interesting fact I felt in this one day 50 over series was that the wickets were patently very different to those that were in the previous matches, in that these were flat wickets. They certainly didn't favour spin, and as I suggested before the last match, India actually left out a spinner and put in a pace bowler, an extra pace bowler for the last match, and he actually turned out to be quite crucial because, and God bless him, he bowled or tried to bowl quite a lot of Yorkers, which turned out to be quite successful towards the end. So I feel that perhaps spinners, I would, in the subcontinent, in a 50 overs or a T20, are less important than they were, and certainly than they are in Test matches. And I feel that a battery of good pace bowlers is getting more and more important. And it was interesting, and you'll, I'm sure, come on to the performance of the Indian bowlers, because there was one man who stood head and shoulders above all the others.
There was indeed. Before we come on to him, finishing off the England bowling attack, the Currans, Sam was probably, I thought, slightly better than Tom. Tom took wickets more quickly. He took a wicket every 10 overs against Sam's every 11 overs. But Sam was a whole run and over more economical. He was going at 6.27 an over, and Tom was going at 7.3 an over. So for me, I thought Tom Curran was a little expensive, a little too expensive on this tour. I don't think he will be chuffed with that. And the other pace bowler that England played was Reece Topley, who played a couple of games. He did okay, I thought. Took a wicket every 35 balls, which is not bad, and an economy rate of 6.7, which is a bit higher than Wood and Stokes, but a bit lower than Tom Curran and Rashid. So kind of lower middle, if you like, in that ranking. Enough to stay around the squad, Tony? Do you think?
You want me to be brutal? Not quite. He didn't let us down. I say that he was adequate, but let's face it, provided Jofra is fit, we are very well served in that department. And don't forget, we didn't have Wokes playing in this series, and I think that with Stokes and with Wood and with Archer and with Sam Curran as a change bowler, I think we are well served in that department. Okay, he's there in the wings, but I wouldn't put him as in the first team at all. But reliable. But there are 2 or 3 other pace bowlers waiting in the wings that I would like to see how they perform this year. I would like to see Stone, see how he performed. Tymel Mills, I would like to see how he performed. And there's one other whose name escapes me now, but there's a third good pace bowler. And of course, there is Jordan as well, waiting in the wings as well. So I think that we're very well served in the pace department. And Topley, nice and reliable, didn't let us down, but not quite as yet of the standard.
No, fair enough. No, I would agree. He certainly didn't let us down, and I guess they like he's a big guy and he's left armour, so he's a different kind of option. Okay, Sam Curran's a left armour, but he's more lower and whippy.
Maybe in Australia or something where the wickets are more bouncy, he might be a stronger weapon there.
Yeah, that's true. But turning to the Indian bowlers, then, as we say, absolute, unashamed, untouchable number 1 bowler in the series was definitely Bhuvi Kumar. Absolutely brilliant. 6 wickets at 22.5. A wicket every 29 balls, and an incredible economy rate 4.65. So he was just going at less than 5 and over. Phenomenal effort, bowled beautifully. Was Kohli's go-to guy whenever the game was getting away
his
from him.
go-to man. When he felt things were getting away from him, bring him on for 2 overs, and he either got a wicket or he shut down the scoring rate.
Yeah. And he carried that form in from the T20s. I think his last T20, big pressure game, decider in the series. I think his 4 overs went for 17 runs. Absolutely fantastic bowler, and just goes to show you haven't got to blow the doors off to be an effective pace bowler. You can bowl with control and accuracy.
Although he's whippier than I think a lot of people realise, But he is very, very skillful and he's very accurate. He, to my mind, Pant was an absolutely top-class batsman and scored lots of runs, but so have we got plenty of batsmen who can score lots of runs. I think that Kumar was the main difference between the two teams, in that he got both wickets and was economical.
Yeah, no, I think there's a good case to be had for that. The leading wicket taker in the series was Thakur. He took 7 wickets at 22.5. So again, very good. Pretty similar to Bhuvi. In his strike rate was a little higher. 20. No, I'm not sure. And an economy rate of over 6. So he was pretty good. He wasn't quite as economical as Kumar, but he did pretty well. And then Prasith, the other quick bowler they brought in, who I thought looked quite good. He took 6 wickets, again average of 29, an economy rate of just under 7. So he was a little more expensive, but I think he was climbed into by Ben Stokes in that one innings. I think a little.
Yes, he was a very strange man in that when he opened the bowling, I didn't think he was any good at all. He got taken to the cleaners by our top order. But when he came back lower down for the lower down in the order, he bowled very, very well, and he was far too good for a lot of our lower order batsmen. In a way, I suppose Kohli perhaps didn't appreciate the nuances there, and I will say this for him: he must have a very resilient character, because having taken stick early in the innings, particularly in the first match which was his debut, to come back and do what he did, I thought was very good.
Yeah. And then you've got the Indian spinners, which, just to reiterate your point about this being a very different pitch from the one in Ahmedabad. They bowled, so it was the 2 Indian spinners. So Pandya, Krunal Pandya, and the other chap,
the left arm spinner.
Yeah, the left arm spinner.
Kuldeep.
Yes, thank you, Kuldeep. Yeah, see, they bowled 39 overs between them and took 1 for 312. Which is the sort of figures I'd have if I played in a Test match. With my rather right arm filth that I would bowl. So they both went for exactly 8 and over in that. So they really were very expensive. And as you say, Kuldeep was effectively taken out of the firing line, I thought, in the last game. And in a game that counted, I think if they'd have picked Kuldeep in that game, England would have won that game.
Oh, absolutely,
and that's not to be overly critical of him. I mean, it was a difficult.
Well, it was a difficult wicket for spinners.
Yeah, difficult wicket for spinners. So all in all, India winning 2-1. I think 2-1 denotes a very close series. I think the teams were pretty closely matched. I agree. I think because in India, the reason India won 2-1 and didn't lose 2-1 was because in the final analysis they had Kumar and they had Pant, who were the best the best bowler and the best batsman, and that was just enough of an edge for what were otherwise very evenly matched teams for it to come down to India. Yeah.
I would maybe favour us on a different wicket in different climate.
Possibly. Yeah, and maybe a different squad composition at some time as well. It'll be interesting to see who's in the Indian white ball setup, both for the T20 World Cup and for later 50-over games.
That is something maybe that the pundits have overlooked. There were 1 or 2 top-notch players that didn't play for India in this series, whereas with maybe one exception, we at Joe Root. We virtually had, possibly Wokes, we had our first team out. I mean, Ashwin didn't feature at all in the series.
No.
And if you look at his one-day record, it's very, very good. And of course, the other one, the spinner Yadav, I think it was, is it? No, not Yadav, the left arm spinner. He's been injured the whole series and didn't play.
Yeah. So I will be interested to see. I think these two teams. Yeah, Jadeja, that's it, Ravi Jadeja. Yeah, these two teams I think are well matched in one-day internationals, and it will be good to see them play again and see how they get on. But overall for the tour, so England obviously they'll have flown back by now. They'll be back home. They'll be with their families, patting their dogs, reflecting on the tour. If you're Chris Silverwood and you're walking your, I don't know what he's got, an Airedale Terrier somewhere in the countryside somewhere, and he's reflecting on the tour, what do you think he will have learned from these games in India?
First, if Bairstow plays, he opens. That's my first statement. Secondly, Roy is on the way back. Thirdly, Stokes must bat at 3. And it was good to see him being made greater use of as a bowler, because I know he's got perhaps a dodgy knee, but nevertheless, he's still an exceptional bowler. Emergence of Wood, I think, as a frontline bowler in all aspects of the cricket, Test and one day, they're pluses. Butler, apart from a couple of lapses in one innings, I thought his keeping improved and he was very good. Where are we at? Why are we still getting what I would call middle order collapses? That would be something that he has to put his mind to. And secondly, we have plenty of pace bowlers, but we have very limited supply of spin bowlers, especially as Rashid will not play in test matches. And Dom Best, promising, Leach, steady, but uninspiring. We need somehow to put something in motion to develop spinners. And maybe being a bit harsh on Best, he's very young, and spinners don't come to their best until their late 20s, early 30s even. So that would be, if I was Chris Silverwood. He's got a couple of things to deal with. What does he do with Alex Hales, who has expressed the desire to come back into the fold? Do we forgive and forget? Joe Root, I don't think it's too much to ask him to play in all formats. The man is, Kohli does it, Kane Williamson does it, Steve Smith does it. I think Joe Root has to do it too. Morgan's captaincy, again, I could find no fault with it. So if I was Chris Silverwood walking my Airedale Terrier, I would be not discouraged. Something to work on, which is right, that there should always be something to work on. And I'm optimistic for the future.
I think that's a pretty good synopsis, Tony. I think that's probably, if I come away with one slight disappointment from the white ball era end of the tour, certainly it's that nobody really put their hand up and took a big opportunity. It was people that we know that do performed. And there was nobody really that joined those ranks, and maybe they were looking for Billings to do that before his injury took him out of the frame for the 50 over games. So, I think that. And you're right. We go back to the Test series and we go back to look at the spinners. Nice little segue into other things to talk about. Actually, I've written an article on India, which is up on the internet, available via Medium for people to read, and I've got one coming up on England as well. And I think I was quite surprised at how effective Leach was when I looked at his numbers across the World Test Championship. And Leach and Bess, I draw the startling conclusion that they're not the reason why England lose Test matches. That they're not mystery spinners, but they've done a pretty good job for England. But you're right. I think it is probably an area of the team, certainly the Test team, that Silverwood would be hoping that somebody comes to the fore in the domestic game that they can have a look at, and whether they look at them first in white ball cricket and what have you, and whether that is Parkinson or Crane or Verdi from Surrey, the ones they've had around the squad, they would look to be next cab on the rank type guys. How they have a look at those. I guess I was a little surprised that Parkinson didn't get a game when he was actually in the squad for the 50 overs. Maybe they thought these are not turning wickets. This is not going to do somebody any good to come in who's not very experienced and bowl spin on this, because he's going to get taken to the cleaner.
Well, the only conclusion where poor old Parkinson is concerned is I think they took him to be around the squad, and if there was an injury, he would have to play. I don't think he went, or they took him with the intention to play him, except if they were forced into no other choice.
Yeah,
I think he went as a developer, and I mean, Morgan without doubt loves Rashid, and Rashid is experienced in the white ball game, albeit he was expensive this last time, but on very difficult wickets, and leg spinners are always going to be more expensive than off spinners. I feel for Parkinson, but let's hope that he had a good, enjoyable tour and learns from watching. That's all I can say.
Yeah,
I don't. He has. The sad thing is, unless you gamble and put him in, which is what India did with 2 or 3 of their bowlers, they gambled and put them in. Unless we are prepared to gamble, you're never going to know with Parkinson, which I find sad. It's one of the comments I made earlier on in this series, that we're fast approaching the situation where it's harder to get out of the team than it is to get into it.
Yeah, good stuff, Tony. That's a great place to bring the review of the India tour to a close. Mac, that's us talking about that. We enjoyed it. I hope you did too. There are some of the games that you might have caught, or some of the action you caught. There was some exciting and close cricket in the end. England just on the wrong side of the white ball series, but it was close. In the Test series, they made the mistake of beating India first up, and India roared back and showed them how good they were on their own pitches. But there you go, England and India.
Thank you, boys. Thank you so much. Thanks, Steve. Thanks, Tony. It's been fantastic listening, and I hope everyone who's watched or watching now after we've had this chat has been obviously inspired, learned a lot, and also in many ways would be lovely to hear your comments about it. So by all means, leave your comments. But first couple of things about what's happening. First of all, Steve did mention it, but do you want to mention it again, Steve, about he's written a lovely article, a deep dive into things. So do you want to mention that again, Steve?
Yeah. On using Medium, which is medium.com, I've written an article on the World Test Championship, and I've written a series of articles. The first one on India is up and available to read. It's a pretty deep dive across the whole World Test Championship of how the team performed, how the individual players performed, and looking at some of the issues that may throw up. There was 1 or 2 surprises in there when I looked at the numbers, and really, really was quite surprised at how some of the players performed, both how well and how not so well. Got articles coming on England, Australia, New Zealand, and also an article across the other teams in the World Test Championship too. And there's also another wee article up there which gives you a little bit on the methodology I've used for the data, and a little bit about the World Test Championship for people that weren't sure what it was. But good feedback so far on the article. There's a lot in there. Some of it will make you think, and always keen to get people's thoughts on that stuff.
And it's a game of opinions, Steve, isn't it?
It's a game of all sport is a game of opinions. Yeah.
And also as well, there's many more to come, right?
That's right.
There's many.
There's a first of a few in the can that I'll be putting out over the next couple of weeks, and then I'm planning to do something similar as a preview for the 100 as well, where we look in depth at the strengths of the squads that have been selected for the 100 franchises as well, just as a little bit of a taster for that, just to see.
Fantastic. So definitely check out medium.com. Check out Steve's articles. What would they be under? Where would people
you can find them under my full name, which is Steve Borley, Borley, and you can search for them under cricket as well. There aren't a huge number of cricket articles on Medium, so if you search under the tag cricket, I'm sure you'll find it there too. But also if you look at my social media for the show at SFTV_cricket, I've tweeted the links to them too, and I'll continue to tweet the links to the other articles there. That might be the quickest and easiest way to find them.
Brilliant. So check out the articles, leave some comments, and that'll be fantastic. And like Steve said, Twitter. Steve, especially in some of the games, lets us know what's happening, and it gives throws out a few opinions. So just let everyone know your Twitter handle again.
Yeah, at SFTV_cricket.
Brilliant. And it'd be great if you can definitely when Steve is telling us all about what's going on in the game. So we'll be here again with some more thoughts, opinions. Obviously, we're moving through the football season. It's obviously England are playing as we speak, and Scotland as well. And once the football season finishes in May, then it will be full force with the cricket season. So the 100. When does the 100 start, by the way?
Oh, now you're asking. I think it's right in the middle of the summer. It's the peak, the peak time in the summer.
July,
I think
July,
July and August. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant.
So they've given it the real
through.
centerpiece of the summer. So it's got quite a lot to live up to.
Yeah,
but the county warm-up games have started already. A lot of counties have been playing games. And
so Atherton's 17-year-old son scored a century today.
Yeah, he did for Leeds Bradford University against Yorkshire. Yeah. I think the university side were 320 for 2 or something against Yorkshire. So that was quite an interesting scorecard. But yeah, lots of the players are starting the test. The guys who are in the test team are now starting to play. Alistair Cook, I saw he was out LBW. He walked. He didn't wait to be given. He walked LBW, which you don't see very often. What a gentleman he is! A knight of the realm. What a gentleman!
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it was a friendly though, Steve. Remember that.
Yeah, always good to see an Essex man walk, Tony. That's all.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what's the next big one that we're going to be looking forward to? Is it IPL? What's next?
Yeah, well, the IPL starts on the 9th of April, so next week we'll have a bit of a look at that. Some of the big names and the franchises and who might be doing what. There's a lot of excitement about the IPL coming up. Also, we've got West Indies Sri Lanka tests at the moment. Our old mate Raheem Cornwall scored back-to-back 50s, batting at number 9.
Amazing man. Amazing man.
Yeah, fantastic. And
gives hope for every man playing cricket, in my opinion.
There is. And Craig Brathwaite, the new West Indies captain, scored 100 yesterday as well, but it almost carried his bat. He was the last man out in the West Indies, so they're probably on top, maybe against Sri Lanka. 217 for 7 there, 100 odd behind, 130 odd behind. So West Indies will bat again, but they look like they're in a strong position in that test match. The other thing that happened this week, which is real village cricket stuff, is New Zealand Bangladesh in a rain-affected game in the T20.
Douglas Lewis.
Yeah, when games are affected by rain, there's a set of calculations known as the Duckworth-Lewis calculations, the Duckworth-Lewis method, and it's quite a complicated formula to calculate. So if you lose 3 overs for rain and the score was this, you now have to chase this many and all that sort of stuff. Well, they had to stop the game because nobody knew exactly what the Duckworth-Lewis total was.
Oh no!
The umpires didn't know. Nobody knew, so they had to stop the game and try to work it out. So poor old Bangladesh thought they were chasing 140, and they ended up having to chase 170 because, of course, it makes a difference how quickly a team accelerates and so on and so forth, and how many wickets they can lose and all that. So, a bit of a shame for them.
Crazy.
And the other couple of things this week, of course, we learned that actually Jofra Archer's what isn't just his elbow that was giving him jip and meant he couldn't play in the 50 over games in India, but he's also got an injury to a finger that he sustained in January, cleaning a fish tank, I think. So that's unfortunate.
He dropped it and broke it, I think.
Yeah.
So not the finger.
Yeah. So he's been suffering from a finger injury as well as his elbow complaint, and also tantalisingly, given that Tim Payne is probably not the best wicketkeeper in Australia, he says. There's some good wicketkeepers around in Australia, but he's their test captain, so he plays. Steve Smith this week saying that he would quite happily become Australia's next test captain again, regaining the job again after his period on the naughty step and then back in the team. So that's interesting. If I'm Tim Payne and I'm eating my cornflakes in the morning, I'm reading my Sydney Morning Herald, and I'm thinking, oh hello, I don't like the look of this very much. I'm not sure about that.
Oh dear! Hopefully he didn't choke on them.
No, hopefully not.
The Aussies are known for their outright speaking, and by God, I mean that was Whether he was prompted to say that, Steve Smith, he would be honoured. He said, honoured
Yeah,
to,
it would be honoured,
captain once again.
It's going to happen. Let's face it. It's going to happen. At some point, the Test captaincy will change again.
I'd be brutal and say Payne was never good enough.
Well, yeah, I think he's.
Ooh,
I think he was possibly the man they needed. I think he was possibly the man they needed as captain at the right time. But
he cometh the hour, cometh the man, and they thought he was a safe pair of hands, and
which is ironic.
He wasn't going to indulge in any of this sledging and all that sort of stuff. But sledging is second nature to the Australians, and so it's a passing fancy.
I'm sure it's in the modern game. It's second nature to every side.
Yes,
in their own way.
I agree.
I'm sure you
can think I was anti-Australian. I'm only winding it up for the Ashes series. Don't worry.
Good stuff. So here you are. You heard it here first.
Brilliant.
Steve Smith will be captaining Australia in the Ashes, and there'll be somebody else behind the stumps.
We'll see. And definitely we'll hold you boys to that. And obviously it's quite robust talk to when there's a captain in place, even though you're a former captain, to be vying and trying to shoehorn yourself back in and shoehorn the other man out. But that's life. And like I said, that's the Australian way. So crack on. But look, IPL next, West Indies, Sri Lanka. So we've got some fantastic stuff to look forward to. So by all means, look at what we've done here today. Leave some comments. Leave any thoughts you have. And look, we love loads of feedback. So leave some feedback as well if you want. And we'll see you next week, 8 o'clock, with some exciting stuff. So I'll leave you with this picture. As we said before, England lost all three formats when they were in India. They tried their best. The boys gave a great analysis. So thank you for watching